Qasim Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Continuing on from the last hadith that we read regarding hasad or regarding envy, and then the one after that where we talked about the love of the world. The next hadith which is mentioned in the book 40 Hadiths by al-Tamimi is something which we need to pay close attention to and that we all suffer from. Of course, the purpose, as I mentioned last week, of the book 40 Hadiths is to break down the hadiths from the books of the Ahlul Bayt and the narrations from them into a way in which we can all understand and implement into our daily lives. So today, one of the evil traits which we need to talk about and the way in which we can get rid of this trait, the hadith talks about the concept of anger and puts a focus on the disease which can creep into our hearts when a person exhibits that anger. So the hadith is as follows. Shaykh al-Kumayl reports from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam that he has said, anger is the key which opens the door to all kinds of sins. If you look in any dictionary in the Western world or you ask anybody in this country what anger means, they will say that it is a strong feeling that a person has of being annoyed or of being displeased or of being hostile to something. However, one of our scholars, Ahmad ibn Muhammad, defines anger as an inner movement which a state of agitation is produced in the heart's blood and it arouses a desire for vengeance. And when this agitation becomes more violent, it intensifies this fire of anger in your heart. This definition which he gives about what anger actually is shows the reality which any person can see. He says that when you have anger, there is a violent emotion in the blood which seizes the heart. It doesn't just go into the heart, but it captivates and seizes the entire heart, and it fills all of your veins and arteries and your brain with a flurry of dark smoke. And this dark smoke causes the mind and the intellect to lose control and to become powerless. You can feel this yourself when you're angry in a situation. For example, if somebody says something to you which is so outrageous or so insulting, you feel that anger boil over you. And when it reaches a stage of going past the threshold of what is acceptable, you actually begin to lose control of what you're saying. You disregard what common sense tells you and you act out of anger. And this is what we talk about when we talk about the disease which anger can bring about. Because it can bring about evil, it can bring about sin. The anger begins to overtake you and you will say things that you don't mean and you will say things which you know you are not supposed to say as a religious person, as a Muslim. And Imam Khomeini says that when this happens, it becomes extremely difficult to make such a person peaceful again. It's difficult to pacify them, so much so it is nearly impossible. Because that person is in such a fit of anger that you trying to extinguish that flame which is ignited inside him is so difficult to manage, and not any person can manage to do this. Whatever you throw on top of that fire which that person is feeling to cool it down becomes part of it. It enrages them even more. You'll see, for example, when someone is so angry and you say to them, please calm down, it causes them to become even more angry. This is because they can't control what they're feeling. The anger has overtaken them and their heart is inclined to only vengeance, to hostility. And for this reason, a man becomes blinded to the concept of decency. He becomes deaf to any guidance which someone may give him in order to try and escape from this realm of anger. And in such a condition, what we see from this book and this narration, and all of the narrations from the Ahlul Bayt is that when a person reaches this stage, there is no hope for him in that situation. From what I'm saying then, you might think of anger as something which is just negative, something which doesn't have any positives to it, but this is not the case. In fact, there is a positive side to anger as well, and a good type of anger in which a person can and must have. The power of anger is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us and which plays a very important and a very big role in the establishment and the maintenance of our everyday social order and in everyday life as well. If, for example, none of us in this room had any anger in us, and we didn't have the power of being angry, and it wasn't so ingrained in our nature, then we wouldn't be able to defend ourselves against any adversity, any calamity which came our way. We would have been defenseless against any accusation, any danger of destruction or extinction which comes towards us. And if the concept of anger wasn't present in a human being's nature, then we would have failed to achieve every single accomplishment and achievement in life. So, if your level of anger is something which is below the moderate level, something which is below what is expected in certain situations, then you can actually become weak and you'll find symptoms of moral weakness within you, such as fear, being timid, being weak, and being lazy as well. Even more dangerously than this, if you don't have that power of anger within you which you can control, then it can lead to submissiveness, to oppression. It can lead to submitting to any insult which comes your way, an insult towards your friends, your family, or even your religion. And this is something which is extremely dangerous. When you don't have that power of anger within you, you cannot rise up and defend yourself or the things around you from any insult or any adversity which comes your way. And when describing the qualities and the traits of the believers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the believers are hard against the unbelievers and they are merciful amongst themselves. It shows that there is a time and place for a person to have power and to use the power within him, to use the concept and the struggle and the fire of anger within his body in the correct manner. The fulfillment of enjoining good and forbidding evil, the implementation of hudud or Islamic punishment, the punishments given by a judge, and the carrying out any religious law, any religious policy which is set forth by Islam or set forth by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, none of this would have been possible. None of this is possible unless we have the existence of the noble power of anger which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us to use in certain circumstances. And it is under this banner of anger that aggressions and any encroachments upon our rights are repelled. It's where our borders and our sacred sites, this is the way in which they're defended. Look, for example, at the fatwa that Sayyid Sistani gave when it was time to defend Iraq against Daesh. It was through the power of anger that the people in Iraq rose up to fight against the people who were targeting their holy shrines, and they channeled that anger in a way in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted them to do in order to defend what is holy to them and to protect what is right and to stand up in the face of tyranny. It was this immense power which came from the power of anger, the concept of anger, which defeated tyranny, which defeated oppression, not just in Iraq, but in everywhere else, such as Lebanon. However, even though there are some instances where anger must be used and must be channeled in order to stand up for ourselves, we must also remember that being excessive and going beyond the limits of what is allowed for us and the limits of moderation which are set forth for us is regarded not only as something negative but as a sin as well, and the source of many different deviations, in fact countless deviations. For example, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says in Al-Kafi that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had said that anger spoils your faith in the same way as vinegar destroys honey. What this means, just as if you have pure honey and you pour vinegar into it, it becomes rotten. When someone has anger which bubbles so much inside him, all of the faith which he has, everything which he clings on to in regards to religion, begins to rot away. And it causes it to spoil, and it causes all of his good deeds to be spoiled as well. It may happen that when someone is angry and they are in a fit of severe anger, that they even turn away from the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of this deviance which comes about as a result of anger. The hot flames which we talked about earlier and the smoke which engulfs his heart begins to destroy his faith. Not only by consuming all of the righteous deeds and beliefs which he holds, but it leads him to apostatize sometimes by rejecting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his commands thus leading him to something what we call eternal condemnation. The person who rejects Allah's commands out of pure intent is someone who is condemned to the hellfire for eternity. And when this person becomes aware of this and what this anger has done to him, his remorse isn't of any use. It doesn't matter if he feels remorseful for the way that he acted. Why? Because the fire of anger, which was lit inside him by the shaitan, continues to roar inside his heart unless he gets rid of it. And Imam al-Baqir actually himself says that, indeed this anger is the spark lit by shaitan in the heart of the son of Adam. This excessive anger which you might find coming over yourself isn't something which you just naturally find within you. It's something which shaitan invokes inside the person, which causes these flames of anger to be lit and causes him to exceed the limits. If, God forbid, anger becomes permanent inside a person's heart and it becomes a part of someone's nature, so that whenever any adversity comes to him, he feels the sense of anger wash over him, then it will be extremely catastrophic for him in the akhirah, in the hereafter. And they say that the form that a person will take and that they shall acquire in barzakh and in the day of judgment will be the form of a beast. It won't even be in the form of a human being, because they said that the person who has such an anger in their heart, there's no match in this world for the brutality of that person with such anger, and they can't be compared to any well-established, normal creature on this earth. It will be raised in the form of a beast, something which is so disgusting to look at. One of the consequences of anger, and there's actually numerous consequences, but there's no limit to the hazards and the dangers which are the products of this sin. It might lead us, for example, to use abusive language or to use swear words. Or it might even cause a person to revile or to insult the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his religion. He might begin to utter slanderous words. He might begin to lie and do riba about people. He might begin to speak badly about vulnerable people. He might even go to the lengths of killing someone. He might begin to wreck the lives of people around him. He might begin to reveal secrets of people purely because of the anger which is boiling inside him. Now, what do you notice about all these things that I just mentioned? When someone kills someone, when someone lies about someone, when someone does riba about someone, when someone ruins the potential for someone, the root cause that you find behind all this is that the person instigating it is an angry person. They have anger in their hearts. That causes them to be hostile and to commit all of these sins. And that's what happens if you don't restrain that anger which you have inside your heart. Anger is the key to every evil action and to every sin which you can name. As opposed to the sin is the ability to restrain your anger and to be able to control it in a way where it does not overtake you and it does not become a part of your nature. And this ability has been considered to be the very essence of wisdom. For a person to be wise, he needs to know how to control and to restrain his anger, and it is the focus of all virtues and noble qualities which a person can have. Now, how do you prevent this anger from taking over you? How do you prevent it from becoming part of your nature and part of your everyday life? Well, Imam Kumayl gives some advice on how to prevent this anger from taking over you. He says that there are many atrocious and horrific deeds which have been committed under the spell of anger and its agitation. Therefore, a person whilst in a state of tranquility of mind, whilst a person is relaxed, whilst he is not angry, he should be wary of his own anger. He should be careful about it if he is in the habit of getting angry often. If this person knows, for example, that being in a certain situation may make him angry, he needs to be aware of this beforehand whilst he is not angry in order to prevent something from happening. He should think about its cure when he is mentally composed, when he is relaxed, when he is at ease, and think about all of the bad causes and negative effects which this anger which may come over him may cause. And he should strive to get rid of this and prevent it from happening. So we need to restrain ourselves. We need to be careful not to let the anger come over us. And we need to think about this before we even reach that state of anger. To control it, he states that prevention is better than cure. This is the case for a lot of things in life which are negative. It is better to prevent an illness rather than to have to cure it. If you stem it and you nip it in the bud before it takes over, then you're in a much better position than if you're a person who's become infested with angriness trying to get rid of it. He says that you should guard yourself so as to disassociate yourself by some means before this anger and the fire becomes more violent within you. You should either leave the place which is going to cause you anger, or you should change your posture. Now what does that mean? It means that if you're seated, you should stand up. And if you're already stood up and you fear anger, then you should sit down. Some people say, what kind of advice is that? Why is this scholar giving us advice to stop being angry, stand up or sit down? Well, there is a narration from Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam which advises of this very thing. He says that anger is a spark which is ignited by the devil, by the shaitan inside the human heart. So when anyone gets angry and his eyes become red and the veins of his neck become swollen and shaitan enters him, that person should lie down for a while so that the filth of shaitan may be removed from him at that time. When a person feels that he's going to become angry at the situation, he should go and sit down and lie down. This is one of the practical cures to get rid of angriness, which Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam narrates himself. So, to conclude, a man and an individual has to have the power of anger within him. And he should be angry about any evil action or any oppression which takes place in the society before him. He should be angry for the right causes and for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and he should defend goodness through this anger. However, this anger can also harm himself and people around him, and it can change into an evil if he does not know how to control it and how to restrain it. And if he allows this anger to overwhelm him, then this is the number one way for shaitan to get into your heart and to instigate feelings of negativity and evil. Anger can then push a person to oppress other people and to commit crimes, which is disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the man, if he is wise, can use that anger to further the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we need to be wary of our anger, and we need to be wary and careful about how we use it, and we need to pay attention to how we can control it. And again, as I've been saying every week, this Saturday at 1 p.m. there is a protest, the biggest national protest in Scotland for Palestine and for Gaza. And it is important that everyone goes to do this. It is in fact wajib upon you to go and do it. If you are not doing anything and you're sitting at home and you let this march go by and watch it from the sidelines, then you are complicit in this. One of the famous Arab poets, he says that if you are silent in the face of Zionism, then you are a Zionist yourself. Sayyid Sistani, what he did the other day and what the House of Najaf did was they hung the fatwa of Sayyid Sistani, saying that it is haram to buy or engage with any country which supports war against the Muslims, such as Israel. This was hung from the shrine of Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam in Karbala. This is the extent we need to go out and use any means available to stand against this evil Zionist cancer, which is not only killing Muslims, but killing people of any religion, any faith, young, old, men, women, children. So please go Glasgow Green 1 p.m. on Saturday and raise your voice, because this is your duty as follower of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And may Allah grant victory to the mu'mineen and the mujahideen. And for all the shuhada, please recite Surah Al-Fatiha after Allah salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.